Hey, so let's talk about this Lifeline project that's due the day you guys come back from winter break. The idea is to create a lifeline, timeline, you can kind of call it whatever you want, that looks like this. So as you can see, it's a big number line going across this poster paper. And the numbers are not only labeled with integers, like -1 and 0 and 1 and 2, but above each one is a month and a year. This student, she made this last year. She was born in September 2005. And so that's 0 on her lifeline. That's like her beginning, her origin. And then she chose some events that happened in her life, like when she learned how to walk and when she learned how to ride a bike, and placed those on the number line based on the month and year that they happened. But she also represented each one of those events with a fraction, a mixed number, and a decimal that represents how many years after she was born those things happened. So like when she learned to ride a bike in January 2009, that was 4 1/3 years after she was born, or 4.33 or 4.3 repeating years. And she went to Disneyland 11 11/12 years after she was born, so just before her 12th birthday in August 2017. She also did some things before she was born, so you're required to do a couple before your birth and after your birth. Here in November 2003, her older sister was born, and that's -2.6. Ooh, actually, I think she might have messed up on these numbers. Let's see. If she was born in September 2006, and this happened in November 2003, well, that's not quite 3 whole years before she was born. It'd be 2 years and 10 months. So this should have said -2 10/12, 5/6. So she messed that one up. But and you know what? That's what happens most of the time when people do this project, is they mess up on the negative events. Calculating the number of years something happened after your birth, working in the positive side of the number line, is generally pretty easy for most people, but getting it right when we're working backwards through the months and backwards through the years and backwards on the number line and the negative side, that's where everybody has a really hard time. So before I get to trying to show you some of that math to see if we can get it right, I just want to point out a couple things that you see on this number line. Every event has some sort of visual representing it, either like a drawing or a picture or whatever. They're all pointing at a very specific spot on the number line. She has the years split up into like 12 sections for the months. And then each event is supposed to have the title of the event, a decimal representation of how long ago or before or after the birth it was, and a mixed number and a fraction. So here she did the mixed number and she forgot the fraction. So this is a really good example here, but it has a few flaws. So this is not a absolutely perfect one, but this is pretty good. And she used some color on it and put her name in big letters, and yeah, and it's very neatly done. The spacing between the integers on here is very even. It's written out very clear. One thing I'll say is that what happens for a lot of students when they do this project is they think, well, wait, I only have about 12 years in the positive direction since I was born, but I have some events that I want to say that happened way more than 12 years before I was born. Maybe my grandparents got married 40 some odd years ago or something like that. Well, when you start your number line, I would suggest maybe putting 0 way more to the right to accommodate just a few 12 years to the right in the positive direction and many more years in the left. And also what I've allowed students to do in the past is, if you want to use a different spacing for the positive numbers, like let's say, oh, I can afford to use big spaces for the positive numbers because there's only 12 of them because I'm only 12 years old, but I need to go way back in the past to talk about something that happened way before my birth, so I need like 30 or 40 years. So let me use smaller, much smaller spaces for the years before my birth. That's okay, as long as it's even, as long as the spacing is even for all the negative numbers and all the positive numbers, it's okay to have a different spacing for negative than for positive. That's normally not okay on a number line, but for this project, will allow it. So let's talk about how we calculate these year numbers. What you're doing is you're converting what you would normally say in life, like, oh, this happened 5 years and 2 months after I was born. Well, we would say in this project, 5 years and 2 months. Well, that equals 5 and 2/12 of a year, because every month is just 1/12 of a year. So I'm sure you've heard people say a year and a half, 2.5 years. What they're really saying is 1 year and 6 months, but that's 1 and 6/12 of a year, and we know that 6/12 equals 1/2. So people talk like this sometimes, but usually only in halves. People don't usually say 1 and 1/4 year or 1 and 11/12 of a year. But this is just really good practice for working with positive and negative fractions and whole numbers and mixed numbers and decimals, and just kind of maneuvering and placing things on a number line, which are all skills that we've been practicing like these last 6 weeks or so. So this is a chance to really put those skills to use and to give something to the class that we could put up on the wall that says a little something about you or something you like or things that have happened in your life. So also it's a great chance, if you're visiting with family over this winter break, this is a good time to ask your parents, when did they get married? Where did they get married? Did that happen before you were born, after you're born? Or if they were married, maybe ask them where, if they're not married, maybe ask them where and when they met. Maybe that's an event you could use before your birth, or something that was important in your grandparents' life, or when did your family first move to Berkeley? Did that happen before you or after you were born? There's a lot of cool questions you can ask your family to learn things about your family's history in the process of doing this project. So let's use my birth month and year as an example. So I was born in September 1983. So for this entire project, everything is just month and years. We don't need to worry about the days. I was born September 6th, 1983, but we don't need to worry about the 6th. So let's think about when I started working at Willard. That happened in August of, what year was it? 2016. Yeah, 2016. And so September 1983, well, that's essentially 1,983 and 9/12. The 9/12 I got from the fact that September is the ninth month of the year. It might be easier for you if you actually list out all the months: January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, and then order them so you always know, oh, this is the first, the second, third, fourth, fifth month, sixth month, seventh month, eighth month, ninth month, 10th month, 11th month, 12th month. So that's where I got the 9/12. This is 1983 and 9/12. And then August 2016, well, that could be represented as 2016 and 8/12. And now I just need to figure out the difference between those two, right? And then that will tell me how long after I was born this happened. And this is a good example because this is going to wind up where when I subtract these, I'm going to wind up with a negative fraction. I'm going to have to think about what that means in terms of months and years. So let me do 2016 plus 8/12, right? So I just broke this mixed number into its whole number and fractional parts, minus 1983 minus 9/12. Okay, so I'm subtracting this whole mixed number, and so I got to subtract both parts. A common mistake a student might make is subtracting the years, but then adding the 9/12 because they're thinking of the fact that 1983 is, and September 1983 is 1983 plus 9/12, which is true, but we're subtracting both parts of it. So you could also think of it as we're subtracting this whole thing. And then, well, we distribute this negative sign, and that becomes a negative, and this becomes a negative. And so what we really wind up with, if you want to be super specific, is 2016 plus negative 8/12 plus, no, sorry, that should not be a negative, my bad, plus negative 1983 plus negative 9/12. There's lots of different ways to do this. You could just count months and years if that's easier for you. This is just a way to do it with whole numbers and fractions and mixed numbers. So now I'm going to take the 2016 and subtract the 1983. And let's see here. Well, it takes 17 to get to 2000 from here. And there's another 16. So this and this give me 33. Which makes sense because I think it was right around my 33rd birthday when I started teaching here. But then here's where it's going to get a little weird. We have a positive 8/12 and a negative 9/12. And that's going to get me negative 1/12. And I have to add these two things up. That negative 1/12 comes from the fact that August is 1 month before September. So what it's basically saying is that it wasn't quite 33 whole years. If I went 33 whole years from September 1983 to September 2016, then I would have gone 1 month past August 2016. So the math is sort of compensating for that fact that I haven't gone quite far enough. I didn't go that one extra month to get to September 2016 to make it an even 33 by telling me, oh, I need to tack on this negative 1/12, or in other words, I need to subtract this 1/12. And so I can't just combine these into 33 and 1/12 because that would tell me that it's been a whole 33 years plus an extra 1 month. And that's not the case. It's actually been 1 month less than what I really need. And so these two things combine to 32 and 11/12 of a year. So I was 32 and 11 months old when I started working at Willard. I was just before my 33rd birthday. Okay, so you could do it this way if you want. You could also just, think about it in terms of like years and months and sort of do some counting. Like, okay, 1983 to 2016, well, that's 33 years, but I know that I should go back 1 month because I didn't quite get to September, so it must be 32 and 11/12. Or another way is you could think, okay, if I went 33 full years from September 1983, I'd get to September 2016. That's too far. So instead, let me go 32 years, which would get me to September 2015, and then count months from there. So if I was at August 2015, then I would need to go, if I was at September 2015, I would need to go 1, 2, 3, 4, now I'm in January 2016, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 to finally get almost all the way back around the full year to get to August 2016. That's another way you could do it. The harder ones are the things that happen before you were born. So I'm going to flip this paper over. So I'm going to do another example, and this time I'll make it a year that's probably closer to yours. I think most of my students were born in 2006. So what if we made up a random, let's just go with the middle of the year. Let's say you were born in June 2006. And your parents tell you that they met in, I don't know, how about September 2000, no, let's go back into the 90s. Maybe they met in the 90s. How about September 1994? And we got to figure out how many years is that? So this is where it gets really tricky. I'll show you a couple of different ways to think about this. One way is you could think, okay, to go from 1994 to 2000 would be 6 years. And then to go from 2000 to 2006 would be another 6 years. So that's 12 years. But we have to look at the months. This is September 1994. So if we went 12 years from there, we would get to September 2006. And that's too far because you were born in June 2006. So 12 years is just a little too far. We have to think, okay, if we were in September 2006, how could we count back to June 2006? We'd have to count back July. We'd have to count back August. Sorry, I went out of order. Like, I don't know my months. We'd have to count back August. We'd have to count back July. And then on the third one, we'd get back to June. So it would be like 12 years minus those extra 3 months, which is 3/12 of a year, and that equals 11 and 9/12. You should know that in this project, I expect you to simplify all these fractions. You're gonna wind up with a bunch of fractions that are over 12. You get 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, 4/12. All of the even numerated ones and some of the odd numerated ones, they simplify. 9/12 is equal to 3/4. So we would write this as 11 and 3/4 years. Here's another way you could have handled this same one and got that 11 and 3/4. You could have said, well, I know that from 1994, from September 1994, if I went 11 years, that would get me to September 2005. Then I just have to think about how many months more do I need to go to get from September 2005? Oh, wait, I gotta pause, time out. I made a huge mistake. So once I've figured out that there's a 11 and 3/4 years difference between September 1994 and June 2006, because this is before your birth, this was before you were born, then on your number line, that's going to be represented with a negative number because it'll be to the left of 0 on your lifeline, number line, timeline thing. And so that means this has to be negative 11 and 3/4. That's a big deal. I would have had to mark myself off some points for forgetting that. All right, so we could also think about it as from September 1994 to September 2005 is 11 years. And then count those extra months from there. So let's see here. Let's use the month list I have over here. Remember, we're in September 2005, and we want to get to June 2006. So if we start September 2005, so 1, 2, 3, 4, now we're in 2006, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So once again, we got 11 years and 9 months, or 11 and 9/12, which equals 11 and 3/4. But because this happened before we were born, we're making sure to put our negative signs on there. That looks like a tripled up equal sign, but you know what I mean. Here's another way you could do this same one. June 2006. Well, that's the same as 2006 and 6/12, or 1/2, but let's keep everything in 12ths while we're doing the math because we know we need a common denominator to be able to add and subtract these things anyway. We want to find the difference between that and September 1994. So I'm going to subtract the quantity, so I'll put this all in parentheses so I have my whole September 1994 in here. It'll be 1994 plus 9/12. And if I just solve this problem correctly, I'll have the difference between these two times, and then I just got to remember to put a negative sign on it because this is something that happened before I was born. So, well, this is 2006 plus 6/12 minus, I'm going to distribute this negative. Remember we've talked about imagining that there's a little invisible -1 there, and so when I multiply 1994 by -1, I get plus negative 1994, and then when I multiply this same little invisible -1 times this 9/12, I get plus negative 9/12. And now we're going to wind up in another one of these weird situations where I think we're going to have a positive whole number and a negative fraction, and we got to figure out what that means in terms of the years. So 2000 plus negative 1994. Oops, I wrote 2000 when I went 2006. There we go. 2006 plus a negative 1994, well, that's 12. So these two things here are giving me 12. And then these two things here, well, 6 plus a negative 9, that's negative 3, so negative 3/12. And so I have to add these things up again. And just like last time, you can't combine a positive whole number and a negative fraction into 12 and 3/12. Like it doesn't work that way. You have to add this negative 3/12 to this positive 12, and that is 11 and 9/12. But then because I know I'm working on something that happened before I was born, I'm going to make sure to represent that with a negative number. Okay, so, and then let me simplify. So this thing would have happened negative 11 and 3/4 years relative to your birth, like considering that your birth month and year of June 2006 is 0 on your number line. Okay, and then remember for each event, you want to represent it with a mixed number, a fraction, so I'm going to do 4 times 11 is 44, plus 3 is 47, so this is 47/4 years. A really weird way of talking about it, right? Oh yeah, my parents met negative 47/4 years relative to my birth. And then also, we're going to write this as a decimal number. So negative 11 3/4, that's equal to 0.75 years. So you would need all three of these labeled on your timeline at the place that says, my parents met. And then maybe have a little drawing or a picture of your parents or something like that would be appropriate. All right. If you have more questions about it, I would refer to the Lifeline Project packet that you either received in class or is linked to this Google Classroom post. Please know that you do not have to do the written reflection. We're not doing this. All I expect from you the day you come back from class is you've completed this page, the one that says your Lifeline Project dates. You put your birth month and year here. You list out your events, some of which are from before your birth, some of which are from after. You show your math and your numbers here. Here's some more space for extra events if you want. And then you give me your nicely done Lifeline poster that looks like this. One last rule. You can only pick one event that happened in the same month you were born. Anything that happens in the same month you were born is super easy, because then you know it's going to be a whole number. Oh, I was born in May 2006 and this thing happened in May 2005. 5 years, yay, easy. I don't want it to be that easy for you. So out of all of the events you can pick, you can only have one of those be in the same month in which you were born. All right. Have a good winter break. Have fun doing this. Don't wait till the last second. It'll look bad if you do that. All right, bye.